Hey, this ain't a shelter, buddy. Move it before I call someone who matters. The words sliced through the room like broken glass. The man they were aimed at didn't flinch. He simply stood there, calm, silent, and wearing scuffed sneakers. To the young white cop barking insults, he looked like nobody, just another lost soul wandering into the wrong place. But in less than 15 minutes, every uniform in that precinct would be standing in stunned silence, their smirks wiped clean, their assumptions shattered. Because the man they just mocked, he wasn't lost. He had come to lead. Welcome to American Reflections. Thank you for being here. Sometimes the smallest moments carry the greatest meaning. Today's story is one of those, quiet, powerful, and worth remembering. If it touches your heart, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like more stories like this, you're warmly invited to subscribe and tap the bell so you won't miss the next one. Now, let's take a closer look at what really happened. The sun was already sweating over the blue hills of Western Virginia when Marcus Delroy stepped out of his dusty Chevy Impala and into the humid morning air. The August heat clung to his skin like a warning. He stood in the parking lot of Station 14, the main police precinct in the old town of Fairgrove, a town that hadn't changed much since the 1980s. Or maybe it had, just not in the ways that mattered. Marcus was dressed like someone trying not to be noticed, soft plaid shirt, worn jeans, and sneakers with frayed laces. No badge, no uniform, no hint of his new title. But inside he carried the weight of it all. 22 years in law enforcement, multiple commendations, a track record for reforming broken precincts. And now, he was the newly appointed chief of police. Only no one inside knew that yet. Marcus had made a decision few chiefs ever dared, to walk into his own department, undercover, before the formal ceremony later that day. To see the truth, unfiltered, unmasked, and unprepared. Because the truth, Marcus believed, was always waiting in the corners. It never showed up for parades. He walked slowly toward the building, ducking through the side entrance, his baseball cap pulled low. The hallway smelled like bad coffee and old linoleum. Nothing had changed. The front desk buzzed with radios and paperwork. Officers chatted near cubicles, passing around stories like old playing cards. No one looked twice at him. Good. He passed a corkboard plastered with flyers. Community alerts, department birthdays, a memorial photo of a retired sergeant, and paused. A small moment, but it said a lot. There were no black officers in the memorial frame. None. Just then, a voice snapped through the air, loud and sharp. "Hey, you lost or something?" Marcus turned. A tall, broad-chested white officer in his early 30s was walking toward him with a crooked smile and heavy boots that clomped too loud on the tile. His badge said, Officer Brady Coulter. Behind him, two other officers leaned against the wall, watching like it was a show. "This ain't a shelter, old man," Coulter said, sizing Marcus up. "You need to take that raggedy look somewhere else." Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but stopped. He wanted to see who this man really was. "You deaf? Or just stupid?" Coulter stepped in close. "Get your tail out of here. We don't need your kind hanging around." Then, without warning, he spat. Right in Marcus's face. The room burst into laughter. One officer banged a fist against the desk, hooting. Another mumbled, "Put him in his place." Marcus froze. His cheeks stung, not from the spit, but from the moment. A moment so ugly, so revealing, it said more about this department than any file ever could. He took out a folded handkerchief and wiped his face, slow and steady. "Is this how you treat everyone who walks through those doors?" he asked calmly. "Only the ones who don't belong." Coulter smirked. Marcus didn't argue. He turned and walked away. Because the next time they saw him, it wouldn't be as a stranger. At 900 a.m. sharp, the intercom crackled. "All officers, report to the briefing room. Chief announcement begins in 5. Inside, the room was full of buzz and bad jokes. Coffee sloshed. Paperwork shuffled. Someone laughed too loudly at something about a DUI arrest gone sideways. Brady Coulter leaned in the back, arms crossed, still grinning from his earlier performance. That grin was about to vanish. Captain Eugene Ralston, a stocky man with a gray mustache and a gut earned through decades of desk work, stood at the podium. "All right, folks. Quiet down. This is important." The room hushed. "As you know, Chief Monahan retired last month." Today, I'm honored to introduce our new chief of police. Man's got a resume longer than my service file. And that's saying something. He smiled, then stepped aside. Marcus Delroy walked in through the side door. He wasn't wearing a uniform, but he didn't need to. The room turned to stone. Conversations froze mid-sentence. Eyes bulged. Some officers went pale. One dropped their pen. Brady Coulter's jaw unclenched just long enough for his smirk to collapse. Marcus walked to the lectern, set a folder down with the station's seal on it, and looked up. "Good morning," he said, his voice even and low. "My name is Marcus Delroy. As of today, I am your new chief of police." For a few seconds, the only sound in the briefing room was the slow tick of the wall clock and the humming fluorescent lights above. No one moved. No one dared. Marcus Delroy let the silence stretch just a little longer, standing at the podium with the posture of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. His expression was calm, but his eyes scanned the room like a hawk circling a forest, noting every shifting glance and nervous twitch. Then he began. "When I arrived this morning, I came in plain clothes." He paused. Not a breath was wasted. "I did that for a reason. I wanted to see this department, my department, as it truly is, not as it pretends to be when someone with a badge and stars walks through the door." A few officers squirmed in their chairs. A cough echoed. No one laughed now. And what I saw, he shook his head slowly, was disturbing. Brady Coulter was no longer smiling. In fact, he looked like a man who suddenly regretted every second of his morning. "I was spit on," Marcus continued, the words landing like thunder, "right there, by one of your own, in full view of others. And nobody stopped it. Nobody spoke up. Worsey, some of you laughed. Gasps. A few whispered curses. Someone at the back dropped their pen. Marcus didn't flinch. Let me make something clear. Respect is not a suggestion in this building. It is not optional. It is the very foundation of who we are and what we stand for." He stepped out from behind the podium and began walking slowly across the front of the room. "Without respect, for each other, for the badge, and for the public, we are not officers. We're just men with guns and attitudes." And then he stopped. Directly in front of Brady Coulter, the man sat stiffly, as if hoping the chair would swallow him whole. "Officer Coulter." Brady's throat bobbed, but he said nothing. "You represent everything that's broken in this department." A beat passed. You could feel the oxygen drain from the room. "When you spit in my face," Marcus said, "it wasn't just me you insulted. It was the badge, the oath, and the people we swore to protect." Brady stammered. "Chief, I didn't know." "That's exactly the problem." Marcus snapped, eyes locked on him. "You didn't care to know. You didn't ask. You made an assumption that I was nothing. And that assumption is exactly why this department has lost the trust of the people it serves." He turned away and faced the room again. But it's not just him. Now his voice rose, each word like a gavel. This wasn't one officer's bad judgment. This was a group, a culture, a room full of silence that co-signed disrespect. He stared them down. "And that stops today." The officers were frozen. Some stared at the floor. Others looked at Marcus with wide eyes and red faces. Captain Ralston, still standing off to the side, gave the faintest nod of approval. But Marcus wasn't done. He returned to the podium, placed both hands on either side, and laid out his first order of business. Effective immediately, Officer Coulter is suspended pending a full internal investigation. Gasps. Someone whispered, finally, under their breath. And let me be very clear. This is not symbolic. This is not political. This is not punishment for appearance. It is action against abuse. He tapped the file folder with 2 fingers. I will not tolerate bigotry, bullying, or disrespect, not toward civilians, not toward colleagues, not toward anyone who walks through these doors. Another pause, then his voice softened just slightly. I know change is uncomfortable. It challenges habits. It forces reflection. But I didn't take this job to make you comfortable. He took a breath. I took it to make this department better. After the meeting, no one talked on their way out. No small jokes. No hallway banter. Just the sound of shifting boots and unsteady breaths. Brady Coulter walked out last, his face red and jaw tight. Some officers glanced away, Others avoided eye contact altogether. His swagger had vanished. Back in his new office, Marcus exhaled for the first time all morning. Then the phone rang. "Chief," said Ralston on the other end, "you handled that better than most would have." "Thanks," Marcus replied. "But we're not done. I need Coulter's full personnel record, every complaint, every note, every unresolved incident, on my desk by morning." "You got it?" Ralston hesitated, then added, "I think you shook them." "In a good way." Marcus didn't respond immediately. He looked out his window toward the streets of Fairgrove. "Let's hope so," he finally said, "because we're just getting started." The next few weeks revealed what had been hidden under years of silence. The internal review of Officer Coulter revealed 5 prior complaints, none fully investigated: excessive force, racial profiling, derogatory language. But no more excuses. Marcus held the line. Coulter's appeal was denied. He was placed on administrative leave without pay. And the message was clear: no more sweeping rot under the rug. But not everyone resisted. One morning, Officer Linda Reyes, a young Latina rookie, knocked quietly on Marcus's door. "Chief," she said, voice trembling, "I was in the room that day." "I know," Marcus said softly. "I didn't laugh, but I didn't speak up either. I was scared." "It's all right," he said. "You're here now." "I want to do better," she whispered. Marcus nodded. "That's all I ask." She left with her head a little higher. Across the department, the air began to change. Slowly and easily, but undeniably, Marcus walked the halls daily, greeted every officer by name, made it impossible to retreat into apathy. But outside the precinct, the world was watching too. At a neighborhood event, Marcus bent down to shake hands with a shy young boy. "Are you really the chief?" the boy asked. "I am," Marcus said, smiling. "My dad says the police don't care about us." Marcus knelt down, met the boy's eyes. "I can't change what happened before," he said gently. "But I can promise, we're working hard to do better." The boy nodded. A small smile, a flicker of trust reborn. For weeks, the tension inside Station 14 was like static clinging to the walls. Some officers adjusted. Others didn't. And a few, especially the old guard, resented every second of it. Whispers followed Marcus wherever he went. "He's too soft. Trying to make us into social workers. Just wait. He'll be gone in a year." But he kept showing up, every day. Same quiet nod, same calm fire behind his eyes. Some officers, especially the younger ones, started to see something different. Not just a man enforcing rules, but a leader rebuilding a foundation. And that terrified those who had long grown comfortable in shadows. Then, Coulter's retaliation came. A formal appeal to the Fairgrove City Council. He called his suspension discriminatory. Claimed Marcus had targeted him unfairly. Filed through the union, backed by a handful of old guard officers who whispered promises of chaos if the outsider wasn't stopped. The council scheduled a hearing. The media got wind of it. Suddenly, Marcus found himself facing a small storm of headlines, editorials, and anonymous leaks, accusations from former officers and concerned citizens. The tension was palpable. Even some city officials wavered. But Marcus didn't flinch. At the hearing, he stood alone behind a microphone. No legal team, no political spin, just truth. "Let me be clear," he said, looking each council member in the eye. "This is not about race. It's about behavior. It's about a man who spat in the face of a stranger in front of half the precinct, who has a documented history of complaints, many of which were buried or ignored. You're not just being asked to review one action. You're being asked to choose what kind of department you want to oversee." Then, he paused. "If you reinstate Officer Coulter, you're not just undermining me. You're telling every young officer trying to do the right thing that this badge means nothing." The room was silent. Then a councilwoman spoke. "Chief Delroy, what would you say to those who fear you're trying to change too much, too fast?" Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "I'd say they're right to be afraid, because change is uncomfortable. But if you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. And if we're not growing, we're dying." The appeal was denied. Coulter's termination was finalized. 3 more officers, linked to prior cover-ups, resigned quietly within a week. For the first time in years, the precinct's foundation shifted. Not violently, but with purpose. A week later, Marcus found a letter in his office inbox. No return name. Just the station's internal envelope. Inside was a folded note. "You're not what I expected. You're what we needed. LR." He smiled. Linda Reyes. Still, the job wasn't done. Marcus launched sensitivity workshops, revised disciplinary procedures, and initiated a community review board. Each step met with murmurs. But the silence of inaction had broken. Now people talked, argued, reflected, grew. It wasn't easy. It wasn't pretty. But it was real. And then one morning, nearly 6 months into his new role, Marcus received an unexpected visitor, a woman in her 40s. Nervous, carrying a file folder, she introduced herself as Officer Coulter, Brady's sister. "I know you probably don't want to see me," she began, "but I wanted to say something." He gestured for her to sit. She opened the folder. "These are letters my brother wrote to me while he was in the academy. Back when he believed in this job. When he wanted to help people. Before all of this." Marcus listened in silence. He changed, Chief. Somewhere along the way, he changed. I don't defend what he did. He disgraced the badge. But I wanted you to know he wasn't always like that. Marcus folded his hands. What happened to him? She looked out the window. He learned the wrong lessons from the wrong people, and no one ever corrected him. Marcus nodded slowly. "Thank you for coming," he said. "That takes courage." She stood to leave. "It's not just your job to fix the department, Chief," she added before walking out. "It's our town's job too." That night, Marcus sat alone in the station's community room, now repainted, refurnished, and renamed the Reflection Room. He thought about Serena, about Brady, about the silence of good people, and how much damage it can do. It was just after 6 p.m., on a quiet Thursday, when Marcus Delroy paused at the entrance of the precinct's main hallway. The shift was changing. Officers were gathering their gear, laughing softly, sharing stories. Not the bitter, mean-spirited kind he used to hear echoing off those walls, but something warmer. Inclusive. Real. And as he watched from a distance, something else caught his attention. Officer Linda Reyes. She was helping a rookie adjust his vest straps, smiling, steady, calm. A leader in her own right now. The old guard was gone, the silence broken, the culture slowly rewriting itself, and Marcus, he finally exhaled. Later that week, he was invited to speak at Jefferson Elementary for Career Day. He'd almost said no. Paperwork was piling up, and politics never slept. But something told him to go. He stood in front of 34th graders who stared up at him like he was made of stone and stars. "Who here has ever been scared of the police?" he asked gently. A few hesitant hands rose. "Yeah," one boy whispered. "My mom says the cops only show up when things are bad." Marcus crouched beside him. "That used to be true for a lot of people," he said. "But we're working hard to change that." "How?" another girl asked. Marcus smiled. "Be listening. By being honest. And by remembering that wearing a badge doesn't make you better. It just means you've got more responsibility to do right." As he left the school, the small hand slipped into his. The same boy from earlier. "Are you really the police chief?" the boy asked. "I am. Can I be one too someday?" Marcus looked down at him. Saw his own younger self in that hopeful face. "Yes," he said. "And I hope you will. Because we need good people in this world." That night, back at his desk, Marcus glanced at the worn handkerchief tucked into his drawer, the same one he used the day Coulter spat on him. He hadn't washed it. Not out of pride, but as a reminder of how far they'd come and how far they still had to go. Change never shouts when it enters a room. Sometimes it walks in quietly, in old jeans and worn sneakers, letting the world show its true colors before revealing its own. Marcus Delroy wasn't a hero in the traditional sense. He didn't lead with fists or fury. He led with conviction, with the belief that integrity matters more than power. That respect must be earned and given freely. And that silence in the face of cruelty is never neutral. It's permission. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or doubted, let this story remind you. The strongest people are often the quietest. And true leadership isn't about being seen first. It's about standing firm when it matters most. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Maybe you've witnessed something similar. Maybe you were the person who made a stand. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, real, emotional, and worth remembering, please consider subscribing and tapping the bell so you never miss the next one. We're building a community here, one quiet truth at a time. Until next time, take care of each other, and never underestimate the power of one person willing to speak up.